Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for December 11th. So, first of all, thank you again for all of your support. My Soulprint Insights channel did reach the magical 2,000 subscribers. It's just a bit over. So, thank you so much for for those of you who hopped over and checked it out. I really appreciate that. So, today I want to take a look at sort of just like democracy in the United States. I mean, Trump is doing everything within his power, legal and not, most of it not legal, to try to completely, this is the thing. He doesn't want to be president for another 4 years. He just wants to leave a path of absolute destruction behind him because that's what he does. He's a sociopath. And if he can't be happy, nobody can be happy. And, he derives happiness and pleasure from destroying things, destroying people. He doesn't care. He just doesn't. Like, that's the thing I think for most of us, it's really hard to wrap our heads around. He doesn't care. And he is surrounded by a bunch of weak-spined sycophants who don't apparently any longer have the ability to say no, except, of course, when it comes to, I don't know, a stimulus package, protecting the country. Then they have no problem saying no. Mitch McConnell, man, it's the first word out of his mouth, and a whole bunch behind him. But, when it comes to saying, Donald, you're out of control, stop it. We're not going to let you do this. No, there's none of that. And I think, I got nothing nice to say about Ted Cruz. I never have had. But the fact that Trump, would call his dad a murderer and his wife ugly, and then he agrees to somehow defend this nonsense lawsuit that they actually think is going to get to the Supreme Court. It's not going to get to the Supreme Court. They're not going to hear the case. It's absolutely ridiculous. But what he is doing is he's destroying everything that he can destroy before he leaves office. And so I want to take a look at that and just see how that sort of shakes out, if you will. So here we go. If you see my tree start to wobble and shake, that would be Nova. Yes, indeed. She's figured out how to shimmy up the center of it. Oh, there she is again, bobbing around. She's quite the little ball of energy, and she's definitely keeping us on our toes. Okay. And for those of you wondering, Skittles is great. He's doing very, very well. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at democracy, small d, in the United States. Oopsie. Look what came flying out. All right, come on down. I got a question. That little girl cat is... Hold on, I got to untangle her. Come here, sweetie. Come here. Nice try, though. You did good. But I was okay until I started doing the full coat with the garlic. Okay, I'm back. She has been exiled to a place that does not have a Christmas tree. Okay. So, here we go. How about this one? Trajectory, U.S. democracy. Trajectory, U.S. democracy. Trajectory, U.S. democracy. this and this a bit. There's my handy dandy wand. I love my wand. Oh, and for those of you, by the way, who just really appreciated the Soulprint Treasures video, thank you so much for sort of indulging me. I just like to share. I really do. Here we go. All right. So, the 5 and 7 swords in many ways kind of, tell a whole lot of the story, right? I mean, he is out to destroy whatever he can destroy. And those that should be leaving him and moving away from him are really being manhandled and manipulated into standing by him. Now, that doesn't excuse their behavior, not one little bit. But, there was that memo that got sent out and, Trump wants to know who's supporting him for, he wants the list for review. Well, nobody's too foolish to not understand what that means, right? It's anybody that is not on the list all of a sudden now becomes a target. Now, the two queens are interesting because they don't represent people in this situation. What they represent is the emotions and the words, the communications. And those are the tools that he is using to steal what he can steal and destroy what he can't. And that's what he knows. That's what he does. It's what he has always done. What is different is that now he has a great deal of power and authority behind him. And worse, he is surrounded by people who will not say no to him. It is remarkable to watch. But, this is the thing. Maybe it has become really, really necessary for some of those politicians to really show their true colors, for people to really understand how corrupt they are, how little they care about anything except their own greed and their own power. And that, of course, is why what's going on with them is going on with them. The GOP people who were standing behind him and who have signed on to this ridiculous lawsuit, they're doing it because they believe that he and his base is the only pathway and the only road to their political future. And I think for some of them that may very well be, very, very, very well may be true. Now, the other thing you have to remember, and look at, there's another queen. And this queen is the Pentacles, right? So that represents money, assets, that kind of thing. And of course, is that not really his goal? The thing that you have to remember is this. The politicians right now that are supporting him, or supporting him by silence, one or the other, they are only really looking out for their own political future. Do not interpret what is going on as these people actually supporting him. They don't support him so much as they see him as their means to an end. And that, again, speaks to the fact that they have absolutely lost any moral compass, any of it. They are all about what is the best way to behave to get what I want. And what I want is an ongoing or continuing or strengthening or even better political future. And so this is what I believe I need to do. And because all my little cronies around me are doing the same thing, well, goodness gracious, that must be the right way. But understand this. A lot of those people, I'm especially thinking about that guy in Texas, and I can't remember his name, but he is under all kinds. I think he's the guy who actually brought the lawsuit. The lawsuit where Texas is going to tell Georgia and all those other states how to run their elections and to overturn that. Goodness gracious. But he's under investigation. I think it's for like insider trading issues or something. And so a lot of the people who are currently supporting Trump are in legal jeopardy themselves. So, what better way to protect yourself than to side with somebody who hands out pardons and is inclined to hand out pardons the way most people will pass their gum around in a crowd, right? He has no respect for the pardon powers except how it will benefit him or those he deems worthy. And so if you're in trouble, particularly if you're in trouble with any sort of federal crime, well, the best way to handle that, of course, is to stay on Trump's good side, because then he's just going to issue one of those blanket pardons he seems to be really fond of. And the irony of it all, and you know what, maybe it's really not the irony of it all. Maybe it's not so ironic anyways. Because unfortunately, and I say this with a great deal of respect, but many Americans are woefully misinformed about some of the actual mechanics of the government. And listen, that's not unique to your country, all over the place. But when it comes to the pardon power, people don't tend to retain the fact that when you are granted a pardon, you are admitting guilt. And whether that is for crimes yet uncharged, whatever it is, you're admitting guilt. Because what the pardon does is it pardons you from what you did wrong. But people don't remember that. And so they think that the pardon just means you were never guilty, you were never wrong, you never did anything wrong. You were like, it was just it just never should have happened. You never should have been charged. You never did anything that would have warranted the punishment. And so what these politicians are banking on is the fact that people are going to see the fact that they are pardoned not as an admission of guilt, but as a statement of innocence. And that, therefore, the sort of stigma of the pardon is not going to settle on them. So what they're going to walk away with is this cloak of innocence. That is the strategy. That's what's going on behind their heads. And frankly, it's working, right? I mean, I remember, many of you may well too, I don't remember once, a couple of years ago, when Trump pardoned Joe Arpaio, whatever you pronounce his name, that I think is a sheriff. And he was flabbergasted when he was interviewed after the fact, and somebody said, well, you understand now that by accepting the pardon, you have accepted the fact that you were guilty. He couldn't believe it. He thought that was the most outrageous thing he had ever heard. Well, except maybe that's what the pardon power actually does and says. So, the calculation is he can wipe my slate clean, right? And because they know, most of them are unfortunately, like old Joe there, they don't even understand that they're acknowledging or accepting guilt. And so what you have is not only people who believe that they're now innocent, but the people who surround them also believing that, well, a pardon therefore must mean there was never any fault. That's their calculation. And listen up, they're going to do or say or behave in whatever way they need to, because in some of these cases, they're actually looking at prison sentences if they are actually found guilty and convicted. So what politician, what governor, what senator, what representative, House member wants to go to jail? You bet your butt they don't. So are they going to do whatever they have to do? You bet they are. And one of the things that they have to do is bow down and kiss Trump's feet. And that's exactly the dynamics that you see going on right now. Now, it is important to remember, even though some days it's hard to remember, and even though some days it's incredibly scary, that the guardrails that protect your country are battered and bruised. But for right now, they are holding. They are holding. And it's very, very important that the communications around what is currently going on and the destruction that is being caused by Trump and his cronies and his sycophants, it's going to hold. But it's really important that, that to balance kind of the worry and the stress and the strain, that communications get clear and that we start to actually look at the facts. And that, again, is something that has been woefully lost over the course of the last 4 years. They simply don't matter to the vast majority of people. Now, going forward, there is going to be a little bit of a problem because you have a significant percentage of the American people who really believe that Joe Biden is going to be an illegitimate president. And this is the thing. The Republicans spent 4 years saying, listen, you Democrats, he won, get over it. The problem is that the Democrats sort of, by their very nature, they were upset, they were annoyed, we weren't happy, all of it. But what they did was they pushed back democratically. They shifted the power as best as they could in that midterm to at least give the House some power. Now, ultimately, I have to say it didn't do a lot of good because you were not able to shift the Senate. Because of that, McConnell still had that incredible power to say, yeah, no, nothing, I'm the Grim Reaper, everything dies on my desk. But they pushed back democratically. What you're seeing with the Republicans and that core group of people who will not accept this is that, they are really pushing back in ways that are outrageous. They're in front of, government officials' houses, yelling and screaming, armed with not only rifles, but bullhorns, and yelling and screaming about stolen elections, which is absolute nonsense. But so they're going to have a harder time sort of letting sleeping dogs lie. But listen, it's not going to continue. And I've said this before. Some of the real right-wing fanatics, they're going to crawl under a rock. And I've said this before. In some ways, they're their most dangerous under a rock because you can't quite see what they're doing and what's going on. But beyond that, you have, when Trump stops feeding the flames, you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to see Republicans starting to pull back from Trump. There's going to be a handful here and there who are not going to, right? But you're going to see them starting to just pull back. And so that fire is not going to keep on getting, one, gasoline from Trump, and two, oxygen from the rest of them. And there really is going to be a shifting of their fortunes. There's going to be a shifting in a negative way of their fortunes and in a positive way for the people of the United States and by extension for democracy itself. He is the fool. He's going to go out being the fool. And by the way, I still don't have any real clarity. I absolutely believe 100% he's not going to be anywhere near the White House on Inauguration Day. I still am kind of liking the whole going to Mar-a-Lago for Christmas and really, really not, playing any. He's going to be mouthy, but I don't know that he's actually going to do a whole lot going between, Christmas and inauguration. I don't know that for sure, though. I mean, it's sort of an energy feel. And I don't think he knows that. And I think a lot of this is going to depend on how much power he feels he has going forward. But the reality is after December, I think it's 14, where all of the electoral college votes are delivered, it's done. It's over. There is no more game to play. That's on Monday. Okay. So that you are at the end of the road. And this is the thing. It always gets crazy right before the end. And that's just the reality of life, right? But I don't know, is this thing going to whimper out? Yeah, probably. Ultimately, Trump is destined to have a broken heart. It is just as simple as that. And going forward, there are going to be things that, investigations. There's going to be stuff going on. And again, remember, federally, I don't know. That's still up in the air. And ultimately, it has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has everything to do with the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney General, okay, in terms of what gets investigated and what doesn't. One hopes, and this actually, viewers, would be part of something that you can do that is really productive and helpful. You need to get the message being sent to your representatives, to your senators, to Biden, to Harris, literally to the White House, saying, you cannot let this behavior go unchecked, because if you do, it will never stop. You have to put paid to this kind of behavior. And, the Democrats kind of have that little bit of that wishy-washy thing where they kind of want to let bygones be bygones and get on with the business of the day. Well, part of the business of the day going forward is going to be making sure that this does not repeat. And one of the ways you do that is you hold the bad guys accountable. Okay? It's just as simple as that. And if you have a job going forward, viewers, that is one of your jobs. It is to ensure that the Democrats understand that they cannot just put this behind them, because if they do that, they are in fact condoning the behavior. Every parent knows that about a child, right? Every teacher knows that about a student, right? I mean, we will, as humans, do what we do, right or wrong, until it's corrected, until we are stopped. So we want to make sure that the Democrats understand that they cannot just let this lie, but understand that that doesn't mean shackling him, putting him in an orange jumpsuit, and sending him off to prison for the rest of his life. But nor can they just sort of let this thing, dissipate. Also understand that Trump's real problems, honestly, are going to come from the state lawsuits, where he doesn't have any pardon power, and where certainly nobody is going to pardon him, because his biggest problems come from New York and New York State. Okay, so they're not going to be inclined to cut this guy much slack. So I know it feels right now that Trump is never going to shut up, but I really feel strongly that at some point he will, only because, now listen, far extreme right, they're going to keep yammering. But for the most part, Trump honestly is going to have his own problems to deal with. And while you may get bursts of noise and chatter from him because he's going to try to push back in a public way about these terrible people of New York who are being really mean and they're victimizing him and how can this be? For the most part, he's going to have his own problems. And emotionally, he is going to become more and more unstable. Because that's just part of the psychological makeup of what's going on with him. Again, I am not a professional. I cannot diagnose, but he is unhinged. Okay, that's my medical description of what's going on with him. Because of that, he's going to have a hard, and it's interesting because some people think that he is very clever and very smart, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And to some degree, that's actually true. But you cannot discount the fact that mentally, as every day goes on, every time one of those 100 Republicans that signed on to this lawsuit signed on, as far as Donald Trump was concerned, that meant he was right. It solidified for him. It validated for him the fact that he was right and that the election was stolen and that he is a victim and that he is being picked on. Okay? So mentally, he really, really is becoming more and more disconnected from reality. He really has entered that place where by and large, he really is functioning in a place of illusion and really screwed up emotions. That's being driven by the fact that he is being motivated by a fear of loss of status, a fear of loss of money, possessions, etc. And so he is like just spinning and spinning and spinning. And the more of these weak-spined people who say, okay, well, I'll sign on to that, not because he's right, but one, because I want him to shut up, two, because I don't want him to attack me, and three, because if I do this, maybe, you know, if I scratch his back, maybe he's going to scratch my back. That's what's going on. But the more he is allowed to, you know, the more people sort of just let him do this, the more he believes his story. And that is where that sense of really, really separating himself from reality is taking place. He feels that, you know what, listen, if I just keep defending myself, people eventually will believe that my defense of myself is justified. And you know what, listen, if there's one thing we've learned about Donald Trump in the last 4 years, is he has perfected that concept of, it doesn't matter how crazy the story is. If you repeat it over and over and over again and you get louder and louder and louder, people believe it. It doesn't matter if it's illogical. It doesn't matter if it's a complete fabrication. All that matters is that people will believe it because you keep saying it over and over again. Now listen up. You've got Temperance. You've got the Eight of Wands, okay? This will come to an end. And balance is there's going to be sort of a restoration of balance. But listen up. Your democracy has been badly beaten up. Your democracy has been bruised, okay? I'm literally hearing the word mugged, okay? Like if your democracy was a person, they would have been badly beaten up in a mugging, okay? That's sort of the analogy I'm getting. So your democracy is not going to just bounce up and self-correct. It needs to heal. And in order for it to heal, it needs support. It needs patience. It needs people coming together. It needs a more centric philosophy, at least right now. There's a lot of things to be fixed. You have to remember, you can't fix them in a sweeping or radical way all across the board, because that sets up a lot of resistance. That's part of the reason that Joe is the perfect man for this time, because he's centric. And so the healing is going to start in the center and then ultimately sort of ripple out, okay? It's super important that you just trust that this is going to correct and heal, but it's going to take work. It's going to take time. But there will be recovery. There will be. And that which feels unbelievably unstable right now will stabilize. Now I think the final message is this. Voting Trump out of office was not the end game, was not the end. It was the beginning of the recovery. The beginning of the recovery. I have to tell you, energetically, my greatest fear for the United States is that people are going to become really impatient, and they're going to feel that things are not being corrected fast enough, they're not being dealt with harshly enough, they're not being fixed fast enough. And I have great worry about what's going to happen in your midterms. Because I think that if people don't feel as if enough has been corrected, instead of facing and recognizing the kind of headwinds that the Democrats are facing and how massive the job is, that come the midterms, instead of actually strengthening the House and strengthening the Senate, they're going to weaken it because they're frustrated and they're angry and annoyed. And that, people, really could signal the end of democracy. So it's not done. This is the beginning. And choices need to be made about how much support can be given to the Biden-Harris ticket to continually strengthen them, so that as they move forward towards your next election in 4 years, they are in a really, really solid position. Because remember, I've said before, the potential is that in 4 years, Kamala Harris could become your first female president. She could be your first, not only female, but Black, Asian president. That's not going to happen if the support is not given to that Harris-Biden team solidly, consistently. It's sort of one or the other, right? Let's hope you choose wisely. Okay, so listen up. It's all this. I want you to keep a couple pictures in mind, okay? First of all, if you think about what has gone on in your country as like a hurricane or a tornado and the unbelievable path of destruction, that takes time to recover from. And there's this sort of energy of, well, listen, I don't care if there's a tornado. I don't care if there was a hurricane. I want, that dinner party to go ahead in 2 months. I want everything to be perfect and pretty. And I just want us to it's going to be gorgeous. It's not. It's going to take a lot of work, okay? So that's one thing. And the other thing I want you to remember is this is now, believe it or not, now is the time to actually roll up your sleeves and start planning how you are going to help and support this administration going forward over the next 4 years to allow for a healthier and stronger recovery. Okay, it is the weekend. Yay! Monday, things are going to start calming down. There's an eclipse, and I think that somehow that's actually, and of course that electoral college vote thing is going to finally be laid to rest. And so you can anticipate a shift in energies as you move into next week and of course, move through in December. But so this feels like it might be a little bit of a chaotic or stressful weekend. So I really encourage you to step back, take some deep breaths, relax. You are at the end of the crazy, and you're now approaching the beginning of the recovery. Take heart from that. Because as hard as the last 4 years have been, you survived them. And so did the world. Until next time, take care. Be well. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.